Welcome to Deliciously Benevolent, where spirituality meets real life. This is a space for raw and filtered conversations about growth, perspective, energy, and emotions. In a world that's curated and perfectly edited, this podcast lives truth without filters. We're diving into spirituality with a holistic approach, not just the aesthetic side, but also the gnarly, confusing, and deeply uncomfortable parts of it. Some conversations might feel soft, some might feel confronting, but all are real.
I mean, we get to start somewhere, and
You're
it's
such English.
now.
Okay,
Oh, okay. So, welcome back to Deliciously Benevolent. I'm your host, Angela Kim, and here is my host.
Yoshiland the Sage. Hello, everyone.
Yes. Sometimes, I mean, I think it's like the conversations that we have are it can be very structured, but because we have tendencies of more, or speak for myself, I have a tendency of jumping around in my thought process, and that's very much ADHD. If
Mm,
you were to diagnose it, it'd be very ADHD.
mm,
Um, and the conversation just goes almost like a full circle. So we're going to start off with the topic of from last time, mental health and spirituality, and how it's connected and related to one another, and also different. So it's almost like you can't really every part of you is controlled by one central brain, but then there could be parts of you that you can't really. It's almost like saying, I mean, that's basically what the world's saying, right? Is spirituality and mental health are very much two separate things. Yes and no.
yes.
That's
Yes
why
and
it's
no. Yeah.
that's why so many people they're like, oh, why can't you just have a straight answer? There's no straight answer when it comes to the mental health and mental, arena, and then also the spiritual arena. There's not really a direct answer because so many components all affect one another. So, yeah, I would say let's just start off with that. Yoshi, where in your journey and how you've uncovered your spiritual senses and your practice spirituality in your life, and also how do you see the mental health also being, I guess, uncovered through that process?
Well, in the beginning, it was very confusing because I was super into physics and hard sciences. So if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And emotions are not measurable. They're
Mhm.
subjective experiences. I'm sure you can measure it. We just don't have the tools for it. But that aside, I just looked at things from a cognitive slash behavioral standpoint, and that made things very roundabout and confusing. And so through psychology, I learned that they don't really have any tools to deal with it, but they have a framework for describing the symptoms. And so after many years of troubleshooting myself, that's what I called it back then. I was trying to troubleshoot myself. I was like, where do I find things that can actually work on these issues? It's like, okay, great. Now I can describe and I have terms for all the problems I have, but what do I do with it? So fast forward many years into Hawaii, and I wanted to get back more into it once my life became stable. And then I met you, and yeah, then the whole spiritual thing started. But before that, I had some resistance. I was like, when I started to become more open with it, wanting to become healthier, like in a holistic way, including mental, emotional, all that stuff, I started attracting woo people, like spiritual people. And so, back then I thought that was like something completely different. Like, what is with these woo crazy people? But that lady helped me get a job. So I'm like, okay, she can't be all that woo, like she seems woo, but she's grounded enough to know what's going on and what's current and it's factual. And that got me a job. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're not so after all. And then I started becoming more open gradually over the years. And then that's when I met you at the speed dating networking event.
Speed dating. Well, maybe for you it
Yeah.
was speed dating, but for me it was totally
Yeah.
networking.
And it's
It
also
was speed
ironic because
networking.
but the ironic part was like your program was called empowerment. So that wasn't really like mental health oriented, but that's like the path that it went down toward. And
Yes.
at that time, I also was conflicted at how that worked together. I'm just like, can we just go straight to the empowerment? like, do we really have to touch all this like gooey emotional stuff? Like, where are we gonna get to the empowerment part?
Yeah.
So now, like after all these years, it's all come together. And now it's been about 10 years now since I started that, and it's yeah, it's really quite integrated. And the thing that physics makes things muddy and confusing is that they think that the consciousness comes from the matter, but it's the opposite way around. It's the energy, the spirit, and then you manifest into a physical body, so it's integrated. It's not really an interface either, but that would be the closest analogy if you want to put it that way. So the soul affects the brain and all of that stuff. So the physical processes are through the brain, but that's not necessarily where the thoughts are or the
For a
memories.
person, for a person
Mhm.
who doesn't really go down that pathway of spiritual practices or understanding spirituality, when you say that, my mind immediately went to, what? How, where do your thoughts come from then if it's not from here?
Yeah.
So if you were to explain that better to where someone who's not is way more grounded in this reality, how would you
Mhm.
explain where the thought comes from?
It comes from your soul. That's that's where it is. It's the soul has the energy body, and then there's the conscious aspect. So the conscious aspect of the soul is where the thoughts and the thinking comes from, and also the emotions. So
From the soul?
it's not anything physical, but all those thoughts and emotions affect how the body works. So that's where things go wrong when people start trying to do mental health, physical health, all these other things. They're trying to do it from the physical to the soul as opposed to the
Mhm.
other way around. The issues are in the soul side.
That's such, I mean, I would just say if I always like to play devil's advocate. I like to always be like, okay, well, I would like to challenge that, right? So my thing is like, okay, if I'm gonna play devil's advocate, I'm gonna challenge that. How how do you again, like for someone who's not really into spirituality, mental health, they're just like, okay, mental health is just your state of mind. It has nothing to do with anything and it's just behavior, right? So that would be somebody who's very closed off, not very familiar with mental health or how communication really affects one another. They're just like, nope, this is the life. Once this life is done, I'm done. Like this is one life that I get to live, and that's it. When it's lights out, it's lights out. My soul just flickers out or something, and it's gone.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
how
it's
would you
if they
explain?
believe that, then that's what they believe. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that's how reality works, though.
But how
So
would you
it's
explain it to
difficult.
where they can somewhat understand what does it mean by right the
Mhm.
soul? How do you work on the soul side when all you know is just one side of it? Or
Yeah.
can you start from a different like perspective per se, like where they're at, and then help them see the 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 bigger picture? Lack of better words, that
Yeah,
would be the best way to
the bigger picture would be the best way to say it. If you're able to steer somebody into a broader perspective,
Mhm,
then they can start to understand. I usually start with Einstein because he's the one that pioneered the whole everything is energy thing on the science side.
mhm.
So that allows for spirituality and science to bridge together because once physicists do understand that everything's made out of energy, but yet somehow they still are very
Deny.
resistant to the spiritual side of things. So yeah, everything is made out of energy, therefore consciousness and emotions and thoughts affect everything. It has an effect on it.
Mhm,
So that's how I would start with it. If you want to be grounded, then understand what reality is made of and how it functions. Everything is energy. So on the the other side of our body that we think is physical, it's affected by our soul. And everything, like all the issues, stuff like that, chronic illnesses, diseases, deformations, like all of that is from the soul side.
Okay. So now I'm going to go further deeper in that aspect of if it's from the soul side, then when you do healing work or you make meaning or have verbal words to describe or to, I guess, talk about your experience, because it's
Hmm.
I guess the journey to life and spirituality and all that is just to be able to express it. And it could be through
Yeah.
music, it could be through verbal communication. But I think the most profound healing or shifts that do occur is that when it comes from the person's voice, from their when they describe their experience. That's the most
Mhm.
transformative moments that I see when people start shifting and they start seeing differently and their perspective starts opening up. Um, but
Yeah, that's
that's
when they're being reflective as
yeah,
opposed to just trauma dumping, because that's also from their voice.
true,
Yeah.
true, because that's where eh, there's a that's why it's like it's really challenging for people to understand the bigger picture because they're just seeing either from far left or far right or really black or really white, so
Yeah.
they're not seeing the in between of any of that. And so it seems like mental health and spirituality, I mean, it's very much similar yet different. It's understanding that the spirit, the soul is to me, right, is to have an understanding that the soul is experiencing the physical reality.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, in order to really integrate the soul in this reality and fulfill our so-called greatest purpose, right? For each person, everybody has their thing that they are wanting to accomplish. Or
Yeah. I prefer to call it thing. Everybody's got their thing.
yeah, they have their own
Yeah.
thing.
Whether it's
Some of
big
it
or not, that's up
overlaps.
to the person. Yeah.
Yeah. So their thing is very, I mean, it could be stifled, it could be stuck, it could be prevented from happening based on whether or not they recognize that they are a soul and the soul is the energy that does keep this body moving. Because it's almost
Yeah.
like, when people say, "Oh yeah, I saw that person's last moments." When that soul is like disconnected and the
Yeah.
energy is gone from that physical body, you just see it's almost like lights out. Even though their eyes are open,
Yeah.
but you can see it.
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't
So,
understand that at first until my roommate passed away and I saw his eyes and he looked like a shell. So I understand what that means. Like I've heard that so many times, like you see that in movies and the media and all that stuff, but when you really see it in person, you understand.
yeah, it's it changes and alters a person's
Hmm.
reality big time when they experience that.
Yeah.
So, you have a better understanding of life in a sense. But at the same time, it's really challenging to explain something that is unexplainable, unmeasurable, you can't really see it. But if you see it, then you're questioning, are you sane or are you hallucinating or are you dreaming in that moment?
Yeah.
So that's, I guess that would be some of the topic from last week was, the spiritual horror stories, like what is real, what's not real? Are you
Yeah.
imagining this? Are you crazy? Are you not crazy?
Mhm.
Um, but the thing is, I mean, honestly, it's very abstract. And if you can look at it from a very
Yes.
abstract way, I think nothing is impossible. Like no imagery, it's just your mind trying to make meaning of the senses, the energy that is being emitted in that space. And so that's where I think if people can see and recognize that we all feel the ick, if somebody has disturbing energy that walks in, there
Mhm.
are people who will turn in that direction. It's like, whoa, what's that? Or
Yeah.
somebody who has like magnifying energy and it's like, yeah, look at me. We all do the same thing, but both of it attracts our, takes our attention and we're diverting our attention to in that direction. But it's now if you felt that then explain how did you feel that, right, to those individuals.
Yeah.
And
So with
having
that, science likes to say that, like the body or the person is an unreliable instrument, but that's actually not the case because our body or our soul is just tuned to different things. So if you clear out all of those different distortions in your soul, then you become more objective and your senses are much more accurate. So when you feel that thing, that's an interaction with your aura and your soul. And that is your body acting as an instrument for other types of energies. You can sense whether somebody is happy, you can sense with they're angry or when they're upset or depressed because the aura around them affects the air. So if it's something positive, I call it a halo, where it has a positive effect, where it makes things lighter and brighter or happier, those kinds of things. And if it's heavier or gnarly, then I call that a miasma. But it's the same thing. It's the same but different. You have like the negative effect, like somebody who has a storm cloud over their head. That would be a miasma effect. So yeah, all of this is through our aura. We can sense those kinds of things. We can sense the energy, the ambience that we're in. It's all affected by that. And for some people who are very sensitive, they can sense residual energies, right? Like there's these different like empaths or clairvoyants. They can step into a space and they'll go, "Oh, this place feels really cold," or it's like very heavy or very hot. These kinds
Mhm.
of strange things. But what they're feeling is not actually a physical sense of heat or coldness or those kinds of things. It's the energy that they're feeling.
Mhm.
Because energy also creates senses.
Yeah, I mean, we could tie it to if we want to talk about this reality is heat and coolness is very much from energy, right? Like if you're in the car, whether you have tint on the car or not, you can still feel the difference. And that's heat or
Mhm.
coolness is also based off of energy. So if we look at the fact that um spirit is energy, your soul is energy, that's how
Mhm.
you are keeping this physical body working and functioning. If not,
Eh,
then you're dead. Physically dead.
Yeah, yeah. Once
Right?
the chi is bye bye, so
Uh,
the body is devoid of soul.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also, I mean, but then again, how if the body is devoid of soul, could another soul enter that body?
There are people that say that happens, but I would have to see for myself.
That another soul went into the body.
Yes,
I
because
think that
the
it's
body has been accustomed to a certain energy, and for another soul to just like come in and take over just because it's empty seems a little weird to me. That if it's really another soul, that you would have physical changes if it really happens, because
agreed.
they have another signature, another energy dynamic, and different gnarly stuff in their soul, and that would cause physical changes to the body. So after a year or two, or maybe even sooner, their physical appearance should change because their emotions are different, the way they use their face is different, how they use their body, all that changes how your body looks and how the health of the body is. So if that's really the case, that should be.
Well, now if we're going further deeper into that, let's say if that is a different soul, could it to me, what's more plausible is that the soul does come back, it's just weaker. And if it's weaker, then another soul can come in, take control. But if it is taking control of that body, then like what you're saying, the
Mhm.
physical like immuting emotions and verbally communicating certain things, there will be shifts in the physique, right?
Yeah.
They're
Oh, absolutely.
communicating, how they enunciate, all of that. Maybe even their tone, they're speaking from a different spot in their
Yes.
throat.
The voice should also be different.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that's something that, yeah, I mean, that's definitely so because how we emote is also something that's practiced, something that's stuck in our thoughts. And our thoughts is like
Yeah.
what you said,
It's like
right?
our normal energy expression is how we
Mhm.
talk.
Yeah,
But I could change it if I wanted to, but if I'm not doing anything different, this is how I sound.
yeah.
Mhm. And
Yes.
also on the interesting topic of like souls and bodies, there's also the twin aspect. Identical twins, if they don't live together, will look different because they have different souls. So they take on different lifestyles, and therefore they have physical differences also. When they are very young, they're indistinguishable because they look so close together. They're genetically similar, and the genetics is stronger in the beginning. But over time, as they develop and their soul becomes more assertive, the twins, you notice that you can tell the difference between twins. In the beginning, like, when they're 7, 8, 10 years old, it's subtle. But once they're in high school and older, you know which twin is which. Like their personalities start becoming different. And the more time they spend apart from each other, the faster that divergence occurs.
So, I mean, that's like going into. I'm gonna bring it back to the aspect of mental health and spirituality because there's the soul, right? The
Yeah.
aspect of mental health and spirituality, how it's interconnected. Let's, like end it with that part. Um, just to round it out with, like how is the emotions? To me, emotions are very much the mental health aspect of it because that's how we can make meaning to our experiences, what we're physically feeling.
Mhm.
Because the body does, to me, it's almost like a satellite, it pings off of based off of what's energy or whatever the radio is picking up on, right? So I'm
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
the
it's a
body is
transceiver.
like that center. Um, how does it relate to mental health, right?
Mhm.
With stuff to heal, with emotions or whatnot, how would you connect it back to mental health in that aspect of, energy does change how we look, how we speak, how um just a lot of things about us, but then how does it affect the mental health?
Well, I'll start with the whole emotional aspect part because the emotions are what dictate how our body reacts to things. And the emotions come from the mindset. So, based on our perception and how we see things, that changes how we feel, right? If you ask somebody, "Oh, well, why do you feel happy riding a roller coaster?" versus, "Oh, why do you feel terrified riding a roller coaster?" It comes down to the mindset. If somebody has no mindset, which is quite rare, then they'll just ride the roller coaster and then experience it however. And for them, that it might actually be like neutral. So if somebody has no mindset about anything, they might have no reaction. It's just like, well, I rode a roller coaster and that's it. So the mindset is what dictates the emotions. When you have a certain mindset where, oh, like speed is fun, then when you ride the roller coaster and it's very fast, then you feel positive. So the health aspect really ties into the mindset because that affects how you feel, and how you feel affects how your body functions. And so when you're out in the sun and you're not a very happy, extroverted person, the sun can be very glaring. Whereas another person, it's like, oh, it's so bright and sunshine. Someone who's happy, when they go out in the sun, they'll look at the sun and go, "Hello, sun." Like they'll they'll do things that people like, "Oh, what a child," right? But that's what happens when somebody's happy. Like they don't care about what other people think because their experience of life is so good. And people who don't have that mindset, they become reactive to things. Like there was a time where my brother wore like literally like a sombrero because he was so allergic to the sun. And over time, as his mentality changed, he started becoming more accepting, and now he doesn't even use sunscreen. So it's all about the mindset. That's where all of that stuff is. So health is not something that you make. It's a consequence of what you think, what your mindset is, and how you feel
Hmm.
in a holistic sense.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds very much like the mindset of, like the olden days, it's like, oh, it's all in your head. You're
It's
you
funny
don't
how true that is. It's the case for many people, but
yes.
also it's not literally in the head, it's in the soul.
I mean, but if it's in the soul, then how does it affect why a person ruminates on those certain thoughts or those certain emotions that keep coming up? Let's say, for example, like one person can experience one person a certain way, very positive,
Yeah.
very,
Yes.
very open, and then another person experiences the same person very standoffish, very closed off, very, um, like that it's just night and day. So why?
I would I would liken that to chemistry because different people have different dynamics. So when they're in a certain dynamic, they will react differently to different people. On the more woo new age side, they would say that you're attracting that experience from that person, which is true in a sense, but it's not really the dynamics of what's happening. It's because two different people have different energy dynamics. So when you put them together, you get a different chemistry for each one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why also meeting the same person won't get you the same, it will be different. It's not always the same. If you have the same mood, same mindset, same setting, all that stuff, when you meet again, chances are it'll be like the first time. But it's not always the case. Like if you talk to your teacher in school versus if you talk to your teacher at a restaurant or at Disneyland, you're gonna have a totally different experience with the teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Because it's
Yeah.
a
So
different
there's also the
perspective and
role
environment.
aspect too, how people perceive or label things. That also
Mm-hmm.
affects the interactions.
Yeah. Now I think we just confuse people even more.
In the beginning, answers make more questions than the questions that they answer.
Hmm. I mean, the thing is, that's why it's this podcast, right? Like our dynamic creates this back and forth and a question of questions and then going deeper. But sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. So again, thank you for being in my life again. And it's just like we never stop talking because when we start talking, it's like you said, chemistry. It just starts, hey,
Mhm.
whatever you've been doing, whatever I've been doing, no matter where we're at in our life and our journey, it just seems like, okay, yep, we're the same when
It's
we're,
complementary
yeah.
also at times. Very
Hmm.
complimentary.
Yeah, so that's how it just things just work out, and that's the coolest part about this life is things happen when you least expect it to happen, but then when you push
Yeah.
for it, you're like, "Oh my gosh, why isn't it happening?" Um,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so until next time, I think we'll just go back and forth in mental health and spirituality because it's
Okay.
just one question leads to another. And I'm sure people are like, now you just confuse me even more. Well, watch us next time and see how things go. So that way, hopefully, our thought processes and how we um, explain things will help explain the weird phenomenon that people experience.
Yeah, this episode was more about like the foundations because if you
Mhm.
don't really understand how things actually work, then if we go further, nothing will even make sense at that
Mhm.
point because
Yeah,
the understanding of energy and the soul and all that stuff, that's foundational to being able to do inner work and meditation and all that stuff. Like what even happens in meditation? Meditation is pretty much pointless if you don't understand any of the foundational stuff. It's like you're just sitting there trying to clear your mind, and that's not what meditation was invented for.
and I'm
That's
sure
the
most people.
misconception of what meditation is.
True, but I think most people are like, but I want to know right now. So,
Yeah. Well, they can tune into the next episode.
yep. So the next episode. Thanks.
All right. Till next time.